then in the future, their own versions of the 8, 9, 10, 12 host podcasts that failed in the wake of ours.
Yeah.
I think everyone is entitled to the same thing. I think even if you're a no labels guy, you should get that.
Just a little bit more on Yarvin. Pogue writes, this is not a conspiracy theory like QAnon, which presupposes that there are systems of power at work that normal people don't see. This is an idea that the people who work in our systems of power are so obtuse that they can't even see they're part of a conspiracy. The fundamental premise of liberalism, Yarvin told me, is that there is this inexorable march toward progress. I disagree with that premise. He believes that this premise underpins a massive framework of power. My job, as he put it, is to wake people up from the Truman Show. It says here,
that's my favorite intellectual text.
But the winds are shifting. He told me about how he'd gone to read poetry in New York recently at the Thiel-funded NPC Fest. A bunch of lit kids showed up, he said, grinning. I'd grown into adulthood in the New York lit kid world. Even a few years ago, there was no question that anything like this could have happened. But now Yarvin is a cult hero to many in the ultra-hip crowd that you'll often hear referred to as the downtown scene. I don't even think Antifa bothered to show up, Yarvin said. What would they do? It's an art party. Yarvin has asked his new girlfriend, Lydia Lawrenson, a 37-year-old founder of a progressive magazine, to vet me. The radical right turn her life had taken had created complications. One of my housemates was like, I don't know if I want Curtis in our house, she told me. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I understand why you're saying that. Lawrenson had been a well-known blogger and activist in the BDSM scene back when Yarvin was the early figure in a world of neo-reactionary writers, publishing his poetry and political theory on the Blogger site under the name Mencius Moldbug. As Moldbug, Yarvin wrote about race-based IQ differences, and in an early post titled Why I Am Not a White Nationalist, he defended reading and linking to white nationalist writing. He told me he'd pursued those early writings in a spirit of open inquiry, though Yarvin also openly acknowledged in the post that some of his readers seemed to be white nationalists. Some of Yarvin's writing from then is so radically right-wing that it almost has to be read to be believed. Like the time he critiqued the attacks by Norwegian far-right terrorist Anders Behring Breivik, who killed 77 people, including dozens of children at a youth camp, not on the grounds that terrorism is wrong, but because the killings wouldn't do anything effective to overthrow what Yarvin called Norway's communist government. He says he's tempered himself in middle age, and now he says, as a rule, now says he has a rule to never say anything unnecessarily controversial or go out of my way to be provocative for no reason. He considers himself a reactionary, not just a conservative. He thinks it is impossible for an Ivy League educated person to really be a conservative. He has consistently argued that conservatives waste their time and political energy on fights over issues like gay marriage or critical race theory because liberal ideology holds sway in the important institutions of prestige media and academia, an intertwined nexus he calls the cathedral. He developed a theory to explain the fact that America has lost its so-called state capacity. His explanation for why it so often seems that it is not actually capable of governing anymore. The power of the executive branch has slowly devolved into an oligarchy of the educated who care more about competing for status within the system than they do about America's national interest. Now, like I said, with Yarvin, it's just like, okay, it's like, so he has this like sort of totalizing critique about how, like, even if you think you can escape the cathedral or fight it, you're inside of it. And it's also telling that like a lot of these guys like Thiel himself or J.D. Vance are also Ivy League educated, homework doers themselves. So, like, of a total pessimism about politics. But Yarvin's thing is like you can't just have like pure nihilism. So, like, he's holding out hope for some sort of massive crisis that, like I said, will lead to like an American Caesar-like figure sort of just taking power and administering, like just reordering society in a way that that escapes this current paradigm.
Yeah, he doesn't really believe that. I don't think any of them really believe that's going to happen. It's the horizon that you fantasize about to justify staying where you are now, going to fucking fancy Coke parties and stuff. What we all do to justify not coming into fatal conflict with the state for our politics, which is the only real affirmation of any value now. Because yes, everything else gets absorbed. We know that. So the only way you can stay where you are and feel any kind of satisfaction with it is if you fantasize about some future cataclysm that's going to fix everything. But that's not going to happen. It's just going to keep slowly devolving. The center of politics is going to dissolve, and regions of power are going to rise and solidify, and the economic logic is going to be the same everywhere because the economic logic is the actual unassailable thing here.
And also,
cannot be challenged.
Do you remember the like the trend pieces about us in like the first year that we were a show? Like
Yeah.
before the pieces were like, you know, putting Matt on the front page of the New York Times in a fedora. When they were positive. I am moved by the similarity because when Yarvin talks about going to the NPC fest, where I would have gone if I could have met some of my favorite characters from Skyrim, if it's a real NPC fest. But the thing where it's like, oh, for the first time in a while, there were like hip young kids there. I mean, how many words are written about how, you know, and not making an equivalence between these entirely, but like, oh, DSA meetings used to be like a bunch of 65-year-olds who would pass a non-binding resolution every year who would say Hugo Chavez was a dictator and not a real socialist. Now all these cool young people are here. There's probably like a, you know, now this is the new feature in the swing of our culture will be like, whoever is 23 at the time, 10,000 of them will either be like involved in some rightward shifting culture or a leftward shifting subculture. And that is another part of the dance. And as that swings more frequently, any shared space in American life, whatever dwindling shared space and shared culture, will continue to get fragmented and destroyed. To the point that I guess there will be 2 Patreons, 2 Disneys, 2 Netflixes, 2 of everything.
Yeah.
And Matt, to your point about like what's truly unassailable is like the the economic logic which, by the way, will benefit Peter Thiel regardless.
Yeah.
Like he's getting his plasma bags serviced to him. Like he stands to benefit regardless, and in fact would only stand to lose if there ever were any kind of cataclysmic overturning of order in American society. It's just, I think he is committed ideologically, like to a certain kind of conservatism, but I think it's just like, and I think he's using his money, I think pretty smartly to promote and advance that idea. But I think what's really going on here is like he wants a philosophy, a kind of a court philosophy for the lead or the kind of like the great man of history that he imagines himself to be. And he wants it like a kind of like his own Machiavelli to the Medici family to say that like, oh, our horrible technologically administered dystopia needs a man like you, a technological overlord. You just keep doing what you're already doing, Peter.
Yeah, that's what everybody is shopping for, a politics that will kill them, that whatever you're doing now, whatever feels good to you right now is what you should be doing. And that's great. Everybody will find that. And which one they pick is really going to come down to just individual aesthetic preferences, the community they find themselves among. And that's going to be the extent of it. I mean, he says he wants to make people to like realize they're in the Truman Show. Well, then what? Just tell each other? Just post about how they're on the fucking Truman Show? Just tell each other that, well, now that I know, I'm going to let everybody else know. Even though me knowing just led me to do what I was doing anyway. Even though I didn't change a goddamn thing about what I do with my life now that I know. I'm going to tell everybody else, assuming that if enough of us know, we're all going to change our behavior, even though none of us have.
What is the conservative version of what will your role be after the revolution? I guess
we're all going to be yeoman farmers.
I'm going
right?
to be, I'm going to be a therapist that helps people deal with their trauma of being in public school.
No, you know what they're going to do? They're all going to be yeoman farmers. They're all going to have like 40 acres. They're going to have a barefoot and pregnant wife. They're going to go out and plow their fields and come home to a big country breakfast in the metaverse. It's going to be Stardew fucking Valley. That is going to be their
Great.
That's going to be their blood and soil fantasy that they're going to get to live out.
I can't wait for the culture war between the people who are living in the Chaz multiverse.
Exactly. It's
the Chaz multiverse.
It's going to be like
the
Mayberry,
Marxist Leninist,
the Mayberry metaverse, the Chaz metaverse. Everyone's going to be then they're going to have to fight each other because you need conflict to resolve.
Oh, yeah.
To resolve the anxiety and the misery of knowing that at the end of the day you're still on the fucking computer.
Well, yeah, okay. So there's going to be the Chaz metaverse. There'll be the ML one where somehow everyone is designing uniforms for the Red Army. The based metaverse, and then there's still going to be like a Club for Growth, like Mitt Romney metaverse. But then there has to be one big one, like the last shared space in America. It will be basically like the Spanish Civil War of the metaverse, where all these sides fight.
And I gotta say, look, if anyone wants smoke with the Chapo metaverse and the upcoming meta cultural war, just know that I've spent just months preparing by strafing thousands upon thousands of meta John Candies with meta Gatling guns from A10 Warthogs. I've been strafing John Candy's positions in the metaverse with brutal and lethal efficiency. So if the mold bug metaverse wants smoke, we got it.
I went into the shared metaverse to do combat with Michael Anton, who's in a mech suit, and my equipment load was too high, and I fat rolled through the floor, and now I'm just clipping underneath the metaverse for eternity. It really sucks.
The Q metaverse is going to be the fun one because that'll just be shooting celebrities in the face.
The Q metaverse
like GTA in like at the Oscars.
The Q metaverse is amazing. Oh my god, that's the real Matrix. Like the stuff in like the ML or Chaz or like based metaverse is just like it's imitations of different lives people have lived that just aren't really remembered even. But the Q metaverse is going to be like, the best operator of the day gets the sacred crystal that Winston Churchill's soul is trapped inside of. You're the citizen of the day because Ryan O'Neal visited you in your dream and told you had to execute Celine Dion. That will be amazing.
Just a little bit more of color from the Vanity Fair article. It just says, up by the bar every night, hordes of young men, mostly, would descend to drink and bear hug and spot favorite podcasters and writers. You could see Dave Rubin and Jack Murphy, who hosts a popular new rightish YouTube channel and is trying to build a fraternal group of men who believe in positive masculinity that he calls the liminal order. Pretty much everyone had the same trimmed beard and haircut, sides buzz short, the top longer, and combed with a little bit of gel to one side. I mean, honestly, it sounds like a Chapo show, except I would never proclaim to support anything called the liminal order, and the hair is slightly longer.
Well, yeah. I mean,
we support positive masculinity on this show.
That's true.
And liminality.
Maybe not liminally, but I do support it.
I'm a fan of liminality myself.
Okay, all right.
Our listeners do have they have all told me that they're afraid of going to the barber for fear that they'll be made fun of.
All right, let's get the part where he talks to Blake Masters. So he says, a few weeks after NatCon, I drove from California to Tucson to meet Masters, a very tall, very thin, very fit 35-year-old. I wanted to see how all this might translate into an actual election campaign. And I'd been watching a lot of Fox News, including Yarvin's streaming interview with Carlson, in which he gave a scrolling depiction of how the cathedral produced its group